and welcome back for another old plus new project. The hashtag that you should use to find all of the creators on Instagram and YouTube is listed above and in the description box below. This month's theme is Sparkle and Shine or Birthday Bonanza. I went with both of these, sort of. Here's a look at the product that I'm using on my card today. It is from the Greetery. It is called Print Shop Garden Goodness. There are 6 stencils in this set, and then it does come with a coordinating stamp that's going to add details to your stencil. They are numbered in the corners so you know which stencil comes first. I have purchased the die set. You certainly don't need the dies, but for the technique I'm using today, which is to use those little pieces to create my own background, you would need the die. I am starting with the stencil number 1. As you can see, I've placed a 5x8 piece of cardstock in my Misti. I align my stencil with a magnet up in the upper right hand corner. This is going to assure perfect alignment, which I'm grateful for because this is the first time I have used this, and there were little spots that I didn't see when I was creating this, and so I do have to come back here and there and add one of the stencils that I have already used to add a little piece of detail that I missed. I started with cracked pistachio on my leaves, and then I added the shabby shutters. I did get a little bit of that shabby shutters on the leaf. You can add 2 tones from the get-go on each of these sections. I was going a little bit fast, and so I wasn't being very careful about not contaminating my colors. I really wasn't that worried about it. You could use a smaller brush or take more time with what you're doing if you want this to be just one color and not get any of that overlapping of colors. Since I'm using distress inks, it really didn't matter to me. This is forest moss, so I'm adding a darker green. I added some dried marigold to the center of one of the flowers. I'm adding a little bit of, I believe this is going to be evergreen bough to these smaller leaves. And just having that stencil alignment, again, is really helpful. It makes this go by super fast. Now, I did miss a section and I caught myself. So right here, I'm going to add a little bit of color over the top, and then I'm going to add some peacock feathers because I wanted it to be a little bit darker. Our spotlight designer this month is the fabulous Sharon Luska. If you have not followed Sharon, you are really missing out on a gem in the YouTube community. She is one of the best teachers out there. Her channel numbers show it. She has so much spunk, so much personality. She just comes up with these wacky, crazy ideas. Her mind works. It blows me away like no other. And if you haven't subscribed, please click the link in my description box. Take a couple minutes just to watch a couple of her videos, and I'm telling you, mind-blowing. You are going to be blown away by her creative talent. At this point, I had contaminated enough of my leaves with a second color, and I thought that I would just add a little bit of tea dye to each of the leaves to make them all cohesive, because some of them had a second color and some of them didn't. I'm going to color my strawberries up with a little bit of Festive Berry, and then I'm going to bring in some worn lipstick for my larger flowers. I'll add a little bit of abandoned coral to the berries so you can see that it's easy to just keep this palette more in the warmer fall colors. I certainly could have used cooler colors and created a summer looking card. This type of stencil set is just so good for so many occasions. I am going to end up leaving a sentiment off because I am missing some pieces. to my collection. They're in another craft room. There's the Greetery has this little tiny tag and then a stamp set that allows you to put happy birthday. I'm going to add that little tag to my project later on when I get back to my regularly scheduled craft room, which is not too far away. But you could certainly use this for a retirement card, an anniversary card, a get well soon card. This stamp and die set make for the perfect all occasion card. For the flowers in the corner, I started with that Mermaid Lagoon, and then I'm going to bring in some wilted violet because purple and blue go very well together. So I'm going to add a second tone to those flowers, adding that wilted violet. For my butterflies, I started with fossilized amber. That was the color that I used for that. Now, Old Plus New is not just for you to be inspired by us, but we would also love to be inspired by you. So we would love for you to use those prompts and then use the hashtag when you post either a video or a card on Instagram. So if you use that hashtag Old Plus New AUG 2022, we're going to be able to find your projects as well, and we really hope that you would play along. Here's where I'm going to start adding that detail to this background. It's beautiful as it is. Just the stenciling is absolutely gorgeous. You're going to see how this comes to life. Again, this is my first time using the stencil and stamps. I am one of those people that would forget what color goes on which stamp, and I would mess up this whole panel if on my first go I laid all of these layering stamps out first. If your brain doesn't works a little bit better than mine, you wouldn't have to do this one stamp at a time. You could lay out many of your stamps and then just use the different ink cubes to add the detail. But for me, it was much easier for me to figure out where each stamp went and to just add the colors one by one. So there's a finished look at this. Isn't it gorgeous? Use a rectangle die or your paper trimmer to cut this out, and you are going to have a fabulous background. It's very bright, very cheery. I'm going to add a little bit of detail using my white gel pen. It's something that I really like to do. I think it just helps make the images pop even more. But I am going to show you how right now it's an A2 size panel. I let that gel pen dry. I'm going to use my die to cut out all of these pieces, and we're going to use it on a mini slimline card. Now you could have created two panels and you would have gotten more pieces so that you could add it to a full-size slimline card. I'm going to take all of these leaves and all of the berries, and I'm going to add them to a background. But first I'm going to add a little bit of that vintage photo around the edges because I used a tape that really wasn't all that sticky. My die ended up shifting in my die cutting machine, so I ended up with some of the pieces they didn't cut out properly, so I just added that little bit of vintage photo all around the edges to cover that part up and distress them a little bit more. Originally, I thought I was going to just use this panel, so you can see that I do have a finished 6.5 by 3.5 inch card base that I'm inking with some of that cracked pistachio. I'm going to go all around the edges and then lighter in the center. I'll add that vintage photo. I'm going to be heavier handed in the corners of this. I'm going to add my bouquet to the center, so that is going to help draw your eye in, and I really like being a little bit lighter handed on the edges and more heavier handed on the corners because I think it really frames everything up nicely. I'm going to do some splattering with some Salty Ocean, and then I'm going to add a little bit of vintage photo. And I don't have a good splattering brush, so I'm making do with this watercolor brush, which is what I have right now. But normally I would be even heavier handed with the splatters than I am right here. This die is called It's a Wrap. I'm going to create a placement for the larger flowers. So for my composition, I'm going to add the leaves and the berries to my background, and then the larger flowers that die cut out are going to go in this bouquet. I'm inking this up with another Greetery stamp that is called Seed Catalog Background. I inked it with some tea dye, and then I spritzed it with some water to give a little bit of that watercolor look to the print. And then I'm going around the edges with Vintage Photo. It's a Wrap is also a product from the Greetery, so I will link all of the products that I used in the description box below for easy shopping. I am not affiliated with the Greetery. I just absolutely adore their products, and I use them a lot. So to align this, you just add some tape runner to the scored lines that I folded in, and then those two pieces go on the outside edges. I've created my bouquet off camera, and I'm adding my background pieces, so everything has been laid out, and I'm just going to glue it down with a little bit of wet glue. I will not be using one of the butterflies. I will not be using that flower, that pink flower that doesn't have a stem, nor the strawberry. Again, my bouquet could have been a lot fuller if I wanted to add, if I would have created a second panel, I could have added more to my bouquet, but I just did one, which was really quick and easy. For the violet clusters is what I'm calling them, I added one to the lower left corner and one to the upper right. And I'm trying to just balance out all of my pieces. You'll notice that there's only going to be one leaf that's going to, one or two leaves that are going to be sticking out from under the bouquet. Basically, I'm working around that bouquet. And once I get this done, I think I have everything glued down, and then I realized that there were a few pieces that I had missed. So I'll go back around and I'll add them into my bouquet, and then we're going to move on with this card. Here's a splattering die, or a stamp set, sorry, that I have. I'm adding a little bit of purple into that background, and I'm going to glue all of my bouquet pieces together. Once I add the foam tape to this It's a Wrap die, I end up looking at this and thinking it's falling a little bit flat. It needs some more color behind it, and so I am going to add some layering pieces. I end up, once I trim down the pieces that are hanging over the edge, I end up cutting my panel down. And so this panel is actually going to be 3 by 6 inches, but when I did it, I didn't lift up the daisy or the Cosmo or whatever that flower is on the left-hand side, and I ended up cutting it off, and I had to create another one to add to my bouquet. I didn't use the right colors. I ended up using, I think, just a milled lavender and the Dusty Concord, so it's going to be slightly different than what it looks like now. The It's a Wrap die set does come with this tiny piece that is like twine, so I colored that up with the Dusty Concord as well as the bow. I added some foam tape to one of my butterflies, and then you can see the two pieces of layering that I have there. So I've added a piece of, this is called, I think it's called Festive Berry or something like that. It's new from Spellbinders. If you haven't seen their new fall cardstock, it is gorgeous. I bought all of their cardstock from the fall collection because the colors were just so deep and rich. But this Festive Berry I thought went perfect with the flower in the center. So I added a piece of brown cardstock to the back of this panel so that I had just a little bit of a pop. It makes that festive berry pop a little bit more. For my Sparkle and Shine, I'm going to go ahead and add some stickles, and I added some sequins from Simon Says Stamp, and that completed my card for today. So I want to thank you so much for joining me. Here's a couple of videos that you may want to watch that are related, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.